And our mission today is specifically to dive into one particularly explosive group from round one. We're talking Group 232.
A monster of a group.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a list of his favorites. This is a rigorous analysis of flow, of production, of artistic intent. We're going to give you a shortcut to understanding the precise criteria and the surprisingly specific musical preferences that led to this group's final ranking.
And what those rankings can tell us about, how modern albums are actually designed and consumed.
Right.
This group was fiercely competitive. It featured 4 major artists, and all of them are releasing records pretty late in their careers.
Okay, so who are the contenders?
The contenders for this specific round one heat were Trustfall by Pink.
Okay, huge album.
Midnights by Taylor Swift.
Another giant.
Sawdust by The Killers, and Havoc and Bright Lights by Alanis Morrissette.
That grouping is just pure, glorious chaos. I mean, you have global pop icons, a veteran rock goddess, and then a B-sides compilation just thrown into the mix.
So randomness.
Before we reveal who survived this musical cage match, we absolutely have to set the stage. We need to understand the methodology, what are the stakes, and what exactly is this World Cup of music?
Well, the author, Greensterox, he established a structure rooted directly in, the World Cup model for football.
Major tournament.
A highly competitive, randomized structure. He takes his huge music catalog, throws all the albums into a digital hat, and then sorts them into groups of 4.
I love the randomness of that. There's no seeding, right? Nothing based on critical success or genre or even sales figures.
Not at all. It's pure chance that put, say, Taylor Swift head-to-head with a 2007 B-sides compilation from The Killers.
And that forces this immediate, intense comparison that most listeners would, never naturally make. You'd never sit down and listen to those two back-to-back otherwise.
And that intensity is built right into the rules of engagement. Once the group of 4 is set, the author has to commit to a pretty brutal judging process.
How so?
He listens to them back-to-back, repeatedly, not just once, but multiple times, letting the flow and the contrasting production styles just grind against each other.
So he's really stress testing them.
Absolutely. And then, only after all that, does he grade them strictly from 1st to 4th place.
And the stakes are incredibly high for the albums. It's not just a casual ranking, it sounds like.
No, because only the top 2 albums, the ones that hold up best under this grueling comparative listening, they're the only ones that progress to the next round.
And the bottom 2?
Instantly eliminated from the entire quest. It's a binary outcome, survival, or, immediate defeat.
That creates a unique pressure test, doesn't it? An album isn't just judged on whether it has 3 good singles for the radio.
Exactly. It has to function as a cohesive, satisfying experience when you play it immediately after 3 wildly different, yet equally well-produced records.
So things like flow and sequencing and thematic unity suddenly become critical components of success.
They become everything.
That context that this entire discussion is rooted in this hyper-specific subjective methodology is crucial. We're analyzing one man's quest to dive into his personal music catalog.
Right. His history with Alanis Morissette, his preconceived notions about Taylor Swift, his appreciation for, intricate production nuance, all of that is going to drive the results.
So we're really getting inside his head.
Precisely. We are analyzing why an expert listener made these choices, not necessarily, whether they are objectively correct.
And for Group 232, this is a classic round 1 scenario. All 4 of these albums are starting fresh, desperate to prove their worth against some very unexpected rivals.
And you see that pressure immediately in the results.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's start with the one who cruised to victory, an artist who forces the author to immediately question his own loyalties.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's jump straight to the winner, which was Taylor Swift's Midnights.
Good place, yeah.
And the most fascinating part of the source material here is the author's initial confession. The emotional baggage he brings to the table. He opens by admitting, and I'm quoting, "I think I might be turning into a Swiftie." Now, given what we know about the author's preference for rock and sophisticated musicality, that's a massive psychological hurdle to cross.
It absolutely is. I mean, he openly associates that moniker, Swiftie, with screaming adolescent girls.
Yeah, which clearly reveals his initial kind of dismissive bias towards the fan base and, by extension, the music.
For the music quality to be so overwhelmingly impressive that it forces this kind of public admission, that's just the highest possible compliment he could give.
It shows the music has completely overridden any of those perceived genre constraints.
Totally.
And it's not her first victory in this quest, is it?
No, he's established her bona fides already.
Yeah.
He notes that her prior album, 1989, already cruised to victory in a completely separate group, round one group 227.
So she has a proven track record of standing up to this rigorous back-to-back listening methodology.
She does, and beyond the consistent quality, the sources really stress her sheer, almost intimidating, prolific output.
Ah, yes, the anecdote.
The author shares this great anecdote about the commotion at his office work meeting because Swift had released another album the same year as Midnight's.
Which is just, I could just picture it. Green Sirach's the dedicated music programmer, trying to focus on quarterly reports or whatever.
Right, trying to get some work done.
And suddenly the whole office is buzzing because Taylor Swift just did another surprise drop.
It highlights the cultural ubiquity she commands. She's not just an artist, she's an event.
That's a good way to put it.
And for someone running a formal, structured quest like this, having an artist just flood the market with high-quality content, it throws a wrench into the system. It forces constant updates and these unexpected group pairings.
So let's turn to Midnight's itself. The initial hook for the author wasn't even the full album experience, was it? It was a single.
Yeah, it was Anti-Hero. He notes he heard it frequently on the radio long before he properly dove into her work for the quest.
And what was his take?
He recognized it instantly as one of the strongest songs I'd heard all year.
So that single track recognition is key because it establishes this undeniable quality before the full album experience even begins. He's already primed to be impressed.
Right. And once he commits to the full album, the description shifts from just simple quality to structural complexity. The Midnight's experience is described as equally impressive to 1989, but he gets highly specific about why it resonates with him.
And he draws on his personal history with other genres.
He does. He talks about the album being full of musical motifs and ideas that are reminiscent of his favorite 80s albums.
Which is interesting. He's not talking about cheesy synth pop, though. He's very clear on that.
No, he clarifies it's those little memorable passages of music alongside within the songs themselves.
What does that mean to you? Like, what is he hearing there?
That's a really powerful observation. It suggests the songs aren't just built on simple verse structures.
Okay.
Instead, they incorporate these melodic and instrumental flourishes, mini breaks, sophisticated counter melodies, unexpected bridge moments.
Things that stick in your head.
Exactly. They stick in your head almost independently of the main vocal line. This is a level of musical layering we usually associate with, highly arranged classic studio recordings.
The technical appreciation just keeps going with the production, too. He calls the music quite fresh and a marked difference from the sound of 1989.
Which shows he's paying attention to the deliberate sonic shifts between her eras. He's not just lumping it all together as Taylor Swift music.
And he praises specific track production examples, right?
He does. He cites the ultra-cool production sound of Vigilante Shit.
Which is a great track. It's known for that heavy, almost industrial bass line and its sparse, moody arrangement.
And then you contrast that with his description of the gorgeous lullaby-esque with snow at the beach, which suggests this soft, ethereal quality.
Right.
The album's ability to move between those two extremes without losing its cohesion is a huge testament to its production mastery.
But the truly defining insight, the nugget that cemented Midnight's as the winner and makes this whole critique so provocative, is the connection the author makes to the ultimate concept genre.
This is the centerpiece of his whole analysis. It's the phrase, almost the pop equivalent of prog rock.
We have to unpack that. I mean, for our listeners, when we talk about classic progressive rock, Pink Floyd, early Rush.
If it's just, what are we talking about?
We're talking about albums that are designed to be consumed as a whole. They prioritize thematic unity, conceptual narratives, and complex song structures over, just churning out immediate radio hits.
So for a mass market contemporary pop record like Midnight's to earn that comparison, what specific elements is Green Sirach seeing? What makes it prog rock?
He says it's an immersive experience rather than just a straight collection of songs. And that's because, in his words, each song ties into the overall theme.
The prog rock parallel suggests that Swift isn't just releasing 12 tracks. She's constructing this unified sonic and lyrical narrative that's centered around the concept of self-reflection during midnight hours.
So while a prog rock band might express that complexity through like a 20-minute instrumental suite about wizards or something.
Right, exactly.
Midnight expresses its complexity through sonic layering, seamless transitions, and this consistent emotional and lyrical thread tying every single track together.
That's it. It's the pop equivalent because it delivers that conceptual focus, that reward for listening to the whole thing, but it does it within the established, accessible framework of modern synth pop.
And that level of thematic and structural integrity is what made it impossible for the other albums to compete.
Especially the B-side collection and Pink's album, which he sees as structurally flawed. The deliberate creation of a sustained, immersive atmosphere. That's what sealed the first-place victory for Taylor Swift.
A truly impressive achievement. It feels like the album's intentionality and flow was almost perfectly designed to reward the author's rigorous comparative listening methodology.
It really was. It was the perfect album for this test.
All right, moving from the conceptual pop champion to the veteran who secured the second qualifying spot. Alanis Morrissette with Havoc and Bright Lights.
The comeback kid, in a way.
What immediately jumps out here is the author's personal history with the artist. It's a big part of the story.
It's a huge factor. The source material notes this massive 2-decade-long gap. The author hadn't purchased a Morrissette album since so-called Chaos.
20 years, that's a long hiatus.
It is, and it tells us a couple of things. First, that her appeal obviously faded for him after the early 2000s. And second, that Havoc and Bright Lights had to be compelling enough to overcome 2 decades of, well, indifference.
He even muses on the titles, doesn't he? Chaos and Havoc.
Yeah, it's almost like the album titles themselves are reflecting a continuing thematic struggle or an evolution in her life.
Though he is quick to confirm that the earlier album, so-called Chaos, was competent, but it failed to blow him away.
Right, so he's not coming in with sky-high expectations, but he does have a clear benchmark. He establishes his personal gold standard for her immediately for comparison.
Which would be?
Jagged Little Pill and Under Rug Swept. Those are the albums that set the benchmark for her sound for him, that raw, dynamic mix of acoustic sensitivity and grunge-infused angst.
So Havoc and Bright Lights needed to recapture some of that spirit, but maybe with the wisdom of maturity.
Exactly. And it passed the test. It secured second place and progression to round 2.
So what was the specific element that lifted this album above Pink and the Killers? It wasn't a concept album victory like Midnight's. This was a production victory.
Absolutely. The author emphasizes that this album is gorgeously produced.
Gorgeously produced.
Yeah. And while it retains that underlying familiar grungy feel that Morrissette fans love, he says it is subdued somewhat.
So the aggression of her youth is tempered a bit.
It's tempered by a layered, sophisticated sonic palette. Crucially, he states it incorporates many layers of wonderful musicality.
I think we need to linger on that phrase, gorgeously produced. In a back-to-back listening contest like this, production quality becomes paramount. What does that actually look like on this record, according to him?
It means clarity, balance, and intentional arrangement. Unlike the rougher mixes of her 90s peak, here, every instrument is given space to breathe.
So it's not a wall of sound.
Not at all. The layering suggests depth, that you can listen to the album 5 times and still catch a new backing vocal or an intricate string arrangement you might have missed before.
And that kind of detail is what rewards the author's multi-listen methodology.
Precisely.
Let's delve into those illustrative musical examples he gives, because this is where the critique gets truly specific and honestly pretty challenging. He references the closing track, Magical Child, specifically praising the saxophone sound.
He makes a remarkable claim here. He says the saxophone sound rivals Don Henley's New York Minute.
Which is, that's a huge comparison to make. We have to unpack the significance of that. New York Minute is an iconic 80s track.
It is. And what defined that sax solo? It was smooth, it was highly atmospheric, perfectly integrated into the mid-tempo track.
And it defined a mood. It wasn't just a flashy solo.
Exactly. It was a mood setter. So for the saxophone on Magical Child to rival that, it implies that Morrissette is using the instrument not just for a quick solo break, but as a textural element.
The sound that contributes significantly to the overall emotional atmosphere. A smooth, rich counterpoint to her vocals.
Right. That is high praise for a subtle element of the arrangement. It shows an exceptional ear for instrumental detail.
And he doesn't stop there?
No, he also points out that the track Numb contains a wonderfully energized violin. Again, this is a sophisticated addition. It's not something you'd necessarily expect.
It adds an almost orchestral dynamic element, a different kind of energy that counters the expected raw rock arrangements.
It does. And the final example he gives, Edge of Evolution, is described with a very visual metaphor. A sparkling soundscape that enwraps the listener.
A soundscape.
That phrase suggests total sonic immersion, a 360-degree auditory experience where the music is enveloping you rather than just playing at you.
So it's this combination of subtle but effective instrumentation, the sax, the violin, the complex sound design, that gives the album its depth and maturity.
That's what he's arguing.
Now, I have to challenge the source material here a little bit. Is it possible that the author, having been away from her music for 20 years, was just so pleasantly surprised that the album wasn't a total disaster that he maybe overranked it?
A victory driven by lowered expectations.
Exactly. Was this a genuine comeback, or was he just happy it wasn't awful?
That's a fair question, but I think the specificity of his critique argues for genuine quality. If he were just pleased it wasn't bad, he would have made vague comments, that has good tunes or something.
Right. You wouldn't be talking about the sax sound from a Don Henley song?
Exactly. Instead, he drilled down into the production decisions, the effective violin, the caliber of the sax, the soundscape design. The sources conclude this was a very pleasant album, and critically, a stronger effort than Trustfall or Sawdust.
So it was a deserved second place.
The objective quality of the composition and the production ensures it was a measured second-place finish and a successful return to form in his eyes.
Okay, we pivot now to the two albums that didn't survive the quest. Landing in fourth, dead last, and suffering immediate elimination was the Killer's compilation album, Sawdust.
Yep. Out in the first round.
And I have to give credit to the author here. He really appreciates the brilliant, self-deprecating title.
It's brilliant, isn't it? It's such self-aware wordplay. Yeah. Sawdust.
It tells you everything you need to know.
It really does. It's a 2007 compilation, mostly B-sides, and the title explicitly implies these songs were literally the sawdust left over after the construction of first two albums, Hot Fuss and Sam's Town.
The scraps, the stuff left on the workshop floor.
It sets a low bar from the very beginning, suggesting these tracks were just scraps, not essential building materials.
And that low bar immediately becomes the insurmountable reason this album fails in the quest.
The central flaw of Sawdust is a lack of intention, which is the exact opposite of what made Midnights succeed.
Right, it's the anti-Midnights.
Compilations, as he says, rarely make great albums. He points out that Sawdust gets a bit random and uncohesive, and it suffers from that structural necessity to include filler songs that were just shoved in to make up the numbers.
And that total absence of flow and thematic unity is a death sentence in a comparative listening exercise like this.
It can't survive. If Midnights was the pop equivalent of prog rock, Sawdust is the antithesis. A random assortment of discarded material.
And the author poses the core, devastating critique against all B-side compilations. If the material was that damn good, it would have made the record, right?
It's a brutal question.
It is, but I have to push back on that logic. Is that entirely fair? Sometimes, B-sides or leftovers are great songs that simply didn't fit the mood or the tempo or the thematic arc of a main record.
Sure, they could be high quality, but just stylistically incompatible.
Right. So is the author allowing the format of the album to taint his assessment of the actual quality of the songs?
He addresses that bias by acknowledging one major exception, and in doing so, he sets this nearly impossible standard.
Which is?
Oasis is the master plan. He calls it probably the only truly great B-side album.
Probably the only one, wow.
But even he admits that seminal compilation has one or two dodgy entries. The fact that Oasis is his only reference point tells us just how rare it is for a B-side collection to function cohesively as an album. Sawdust just couldn't replicate that magic for him.
So let's look at the specific critiques that solidified its fourth place finish.
Yeah.
What was the absolute worst offender on the album in terms of filler?
He expresses sheer exasperation over one inclusion in particular, the 10-minute electro dance remix of Mr. Brightside. Yeah. This inclusion is just structurally ruinous for an album experience. It takes an iconic, already perfect song and stretches it into this meandering, irrelevant club track.
It immediately signals that the compilation is prioritizing quantity over quality or flow.
It screams shoved in to make up the numbers.
It wasn't a total loss, though. He does praise a couple of specific inclusions, which shows that even amidst the sawdust, there were still some worthy kernels of wood.
He did. He praised the stripped-down, high-quality production of the Abbey Road version of Sam's Town.
A nice alternate take.
And notably, their cover of Dire Straits' Romeo and Juliet. For the cover, he provides some excellent insight, praising the Killers for wisely sticking close to the original arrangement.
Which is often the best choice for a cover.
It is. This decision allowed Brandon Flowers' charismatic vocal delivery to really shine, making it a refreshing effort rather than a pointless reinterpretation.
But even the high points just reinforce the album's main problem, which is redundancy.
How so?
Well, if the best material is either a cover of someone else's song or a version of a track you've already heard elsewhere, the album's value proposition just collapses, doesn't it?
That's exactly his point. The author notes that the tracks he considers the best material on Sawdust, All the Pretty Faces, and Where the White Boys Dance are tracks he already owns on his extended edition of Sam's Town.
So if the core strength of the album is redundant material, why even listen to the compilation? It fails the value test in the album quest.
It does. And finally, you have the Lou Reed mystery. The opener, Tranquilize, features the legendary Lou Reed in a major collaboration.
That should be an event.
It should be a huge deal, yet it was only deemed slightly above average.
And that is the definitive nail in the coffin for the B-side thesis, isn't it?
It has to be. If you secure a collaboration with a monumental figure like Lou Reed, that track is supposed to be album-defining.
An anchor.
The fact that it was not deemed essential enough for a main record and then was only judged as competent on the compilation, it just confirms the author's overall suspicion. This was non-essential material.
Competent, but ultimately unable to hold up against the cohesive, intentional artistry of Midnights or Havoc and Bright Lights.
Exactly. Sawdust limped home in last place.
Our final album up for analysis is Pink's Trustfall, which sadly limped home in third place, securing elimination.
The other casualty of the group.
This is perhaps the most surprising result, given the album's massive commercial status. The author acknowledges her prolific history and notes that Trustfall, her 9th studio album, was a commercial giant. It hit #1 in several countries.
And the author's a confirmed fan. He says he's seen her live. He appreciates her history of balancing styles. So this loss is not an attack on Pink's talent. It's a critique of the specific structure of this particular album. The source confirms all 4 albums in the group are brilliantly produced with some excellent material. Pink lost because of a specific perceived lack of stylistic breadth, especially when compared to her own high standards.
That is the core of the critique. The album lacks the dynamic range we expect from Pink. She's famous for her ability to shift gears: pop, rock, ballads, dance pop, even moments of punk rock aggression.
And Trustfall, he says, only seems to have 2 speeds.
Okay, let's define these 2 speeds, because this is where the structural flaw becomes really clear. Speed 1 is what?
Speed 1 is her strong suit. Quick electropop, this is classic Pink, the anthemic energy. He cites the title track, Trustfall, which is a strong, uplifting banger.
A great song.
He also mentions Runaway, which he describes as having a very clear 80s influence fast, driving relying heavily on synthesized instrumentation and drum machines. Hate Me falls into this category as well.
So these are the tracks where her signature defiant energy really shines.
Exactly.
And what about Speed 2?
Speed 2 is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the incredibly slow, organic tracks. The author finds these not overly convincing. He says they sound a little bit tired.
Tired. Ouch.
Yeah. They lean into that acoustic, raw sincerity, but for him, they fail to resonate with the necessary emotional punch. Specific examples he gives are When I Get There, Long Way to Go, and Kids in Love.
This sounds like a problem of emotional weight. If the slow tracks sound tired, they just drag the energy of the whole album down. It's like having a high-performance sports car that only has 2 gears, blazing fast or standing still.
That's a perfect metaphor.
Pink's strength usually lies in shifting smoothly through all the gears in between.
And that crucial middle ground, the mid-tempo, rock-infused tracks that typically bridge her punk edge and her pop sensibilities, is what he feels is missing. It makes the album feel jarring. The listener is just whipped between these 2 extremes.
And before we get to the track sequencing, we have to talk about the moment of intense author personality, the programmer's quirk.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
The author takes great exception to the song title, Never Gonna Not Dance Again.
I love this detail because it shows the technical rigor he applies to everything, even song titles. He notes, all good programmers know you never specify a double negative.
For him, it's not just linguistically clunky, it's inefficient coding.
It's bad logic, and while he admits the song is catchy but in a bit of an annoying way, That technical flaw in the title represents this fundamental structural laziness that a hyper-analytical mind just cannot ignore.
It pulls him out of the immersive experience he's looking for.
It totally does.
That level of detail shows exactly why this album quest is so revealing. A casual fan might dismiss the double negative as just, stylistic flair.
But for the author, it's a design flaw.
Right. Now let's combine that two speeds problem with the sequencing critique. This is where the structural failure of Trustfall really hurt it in the quest.
Yeah, the track list. He couldn't understand why the incredibly slow, tired-sounding track When I Get There was chosen to open the album.
Which sets a somber, slow tone immediately. In a back-to-back comparison, an album has seconds to establish its dominance and its flow. That's a rough start.
It's a terrible start. He argues that the incredibly slow track feels like it should have been in the middle or towards the end, serving as a reflective break.
Instead, it just creates this initial inertia.
Exactly. He posits that the title track, Trustfall, which is speed 1, would have been a cracking opening salvo. It would have set an energetic, dynamic tone that showcases Pink's best attributes right away.
So the sequencing error essentially sabotaged the album's chance by showcasing its weakest speed first. The momentum stalled before it even got started.
That's the conclusion he comes to. The final assessment states that the lack of breadth detracts somewhat from the overall experience. Despite being a massive fan, the author felt the album was either missing something or had too much slow stuff.
And that structural imbalance just killed it in the end.
It meant that when the final tracks are sung and Just Say You're Sorry rolled around, the album just crawls to an end. It lacked the finishing energy required to push past the sophisticated production of Alanis Morrissette,
resulting in the third-place finish and elimination. It's a harsh lesson, isn't it? In the battle for album survival, poor track sequencing can override commercial success and even individual track quality.
It really can. Flow is everything.
This album quest into Group 232 provided a fascinating, really granular look at what it takes for an album to survive a rigorous, comparative listening challenge. Let's quickly recap the final rankings and the two albums that advanced.
For sure. In first place, progressing to round 2, was Midnights by Taylor Swift, the success story of conceptual cohesion.
The pop equivalent of prog rock.
In second place, also progressing, was Havoc and Bright Lights by Alanis Morrissette, a triumph of sophisticated, layered production.
In the eliminated albums,
The two eliminated albums were Trustfall by Pink in third, suffering from that lack of dynamic range and the sequencing errors we talked about,
the two-speed,
and Sawdust by The Killers, landing in fourth place due to the inherent lack of cohesion you get with B-side compilations.
The sheer depth of Greens to Rocks' critique shows us that this quest is so much more than just a preference list. It's a detailed lesson in musical design and artistic intent.
It absolutely is. I mean, we saw the triumph of the focused, thematic concept album in Midnights that proves flow and thematic unity are key differentiators even in mainstream pop.
Right.
We saw how a veteran can successfully make a return to form, as Alanis Morissette did, by focusing on mature, high-quality production details that really reward deep listening.
And conversely, we learned the specific structural dangers of compilations with Sawdust. Even if some of the songs are individually great, a collection that lacks a necessary flow and a thematic purpose will inevitably fall short when you compare it to a single intentional body of work.
And finally, we saw the pitfall of stylistic imbalance with Pink's Trustfall. Commercial success and great individual tracks are just not enough if the album's internal structure, the sequencing, and those two speeds creates a disjointed and ultimately unsatisfying overall experience for the dedicated listener.